there's usually two kinds of weight that we're carrying at any given time. You're like, wow, why am I freaking out right now? But it actually does make sense from a nervous system perspective. Some of the things that we're struggling with do have to do with the present moment, but a lot of the times, if my internal state was different, would the external situation still be a problem? If you do make the commitment to apply this process, it will have real and lasting change in your life overall. Hey guys, everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. This is going to be a continuation of the last video where I went over what is at the root of being an overwhelmed mother. And if you haven't seen that yet, then I will link it up above and down below for you to check out. And today I want to share a simple but effective process that is both faith-based and trauma-informed to hopefully help you move through those hard seasons of life with a little bit more faith-filled encouragement, peace, and grace. I do want to mention that with this process, although simple, it's not necessarily easy or quick because we are dealing with the layered and often deeply rooted aspects of our situations. But if you do make the commitment to apply this process, it can have really deep and lasting impacts on your life. Okay, so before we go into this process, I do want to just briefly lay some groundwork. When we get overwhelmed, there's usually two kinds of weight that we're carrying at any given time. So the kind that we can see and the kind that we can't see. With the external load, it's things like feeding the baby, soothing the baby, changing the baby, while still being a keeper of the home and trying to meet our own basic needs as well. And at its core, the visible weight is mostly tied to the incredibly selfless calling of being a mother. The calling to meet every need of another human being and to be their safe and connected space from which they are going to go out and engage with the rest of the world. And that calling is such a deep and significant one, and it has both current impacts and long-term impacts. And the internal load, while quieter and sometimes even silent, it's just as heavy. It's the guilt, it's the mental load, it's the wondering if you're doing things right. But when we go beyond our window of tolerance, which is that zone where we can cope and function well, that's when we get into the territory of being overwhelmed. And overwhelm doesn't always look loud. It can be intense and reactive, but it can also be withdrawn and detached. And so some of the things that we're struggling with do have to do with the present moment, but a lot of the times they're layered with things from the past that we haven't fully processed or about fears regarding the future. And a lot of the time, internal and external stressors pile on at the same time. And if we don't stop to pause and ask, okay, what is really going on here? What are the different stressors that are coming up for me? Then we can tend to oversimplify. And when we oversimplify, we tend to misplace blame and to point out one single thing and say, that's it, that's the problem, that is the thing that needs to change. Usually because it feels easier or more obvious in the moment, even if it's not the real or only issue. I've got to go get my baby. Hello? Whoa. And with that, let's dive into our process. So first things first is to go to God first, right? As Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. And our God is a good God. Our God is a perfect and just and loving God, and we are not. And so I know that I definitely would prefer God's influence over my life and myself than my own influence or the world's influence. And that is something that is such a game changer, because it can be very easy, especially in stressful moments, to get quite self-centered and to revert to habitual ways of thinking and responding or reacting to situations. So the first step is to ask yourself this question. If my internal state, so how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking about the situation, if my internal state was different, would the external situation still be a problem? And if the answer is no, it wouldn't still be a problem, then we need to just focus on our internal state. And if the answer is yes, then we need to deal with both our internal state and the external situation. Which leads us into step 2, which is resource ourselves in the short term, because we can't really think clearly or be making any sort of logical or rational decisions when we are in that state of overwhelm, because we are outside of our window of tolerance of being able to cope and respond well to situations. And so the next step is to regulate ourselves in the short term. And I'll give you a couple of ideas, but it's really anything where you start to feel capable and you're much more you're feeling better, essentially. So you can have a hot shower, you can go for a walk, you can enjoy a very nice, nourishing meal, you can have a little nap, you can literally sit there with a cup of coffee or tea or whatever and just stare at a wall or stare outside, just like anything that will help you to just no longer be overwhelmed. And usually it doesn't really matter what we're doing, it's just taking that time away from the situation to just kind of decompress a little bit. And once you have decompressed a little bit, then that leads us into step number 3, which is to identify our stressors. Break it up into 2 parts, again, the external and the internal. So sit down and really just go, okay, what is the problem? Or more accurately, what are the problems? And just lay it out. Anything you can think of, everything you can think of. Sometimes it can help to discuss this with somebody. I know that for me, I tend to be more of a verbal processor, so I am organizing my thoughts and coming to understandings as I'm speaking, which is why sometimes I need to edit videos a lot because I'm just going off tangents. Anyways, an external problem could be a missed nap or clutter everywhere or your partner coming home late from work. And the internal things are the things that you are thinking and feeling that is just not helping you in the situation. The internal things could be the comparison or the guilt or the shame or the feeling some type of way about your baby crying and feeling like stressed out by that. And this is where this process is really helpful, because in identifying what our problems are, it usually tends to clarify what our needs are. And then step number 4 is to find ways to layer in more support around those stressors that you identify, and really ask yourself, what kind of system or change can help create a bit more ease in this situation. So for example, if the mornings are always seeming rushed and that's when you feel the most overwhelmed, what can you prepare the night before so that you don't have to do as much the following day? Or if it's the end of the day and you find yourself really just thinking like you didn't do enough, but logically I actually did so much. So how can you psychologically lower the bar for yourself intentionally in those situations? And if you're finding that you're feeling anxious or detached when your baby is crying and that's a repeated issue, then maybe you need to see someone, a therapist, to work through what exactly is being triggered in those moments, because your own discomfort in the situation is impacting the way that you are responding to your baby when he or she is upset. And with any of the stressors, it's always worth exploring whether there is a trigger. A trigger basically means that there is something about a past wound or a past stressful situation that you weren't able to process fully in that moment. And so because you weren't able to fully process it and integrate it and file it away in your long-term memory as like, okay, that situation happened, I moved through it, and now it's over, then what happens is that in a current situation that's stressful, our brain we might not even see that it's related, but our brain, if there is some sort of link to a current situation, not only are we dealing with the current situation that's stressful, but then the past situation that was stressful that we didn't fully process yet is also being triggered in that moment. And so essentially we are dealing with multiple stressful moments from multiple moments of our lives at the same time. So of course it feels much more stressful. And sometimes that is usually why our reaction to a situation looks disproportionate to the actual current situation. But it feels very much proportionate for us because the way that we're experiencing it is that we are experiencing multiple stressful situations at once. And so from the outside looking in and from your rational brain of looking at the situation, you're like, wow, why am I breaking out right now? That is not what the situation is calling for, but it actually does make sense from a nervous system perspective. And that is why I really highly recommend seeing, okay, is there anything else from my past that might also be getting triggered here, and what can I do to create the time and space to put the past experiences to bed. Current situations can be hard enough. We don't really need the past compounding it and just making it a lot more difficult. You don't even have to be overwhelmed. You can just notice like, oh, I was a bit more angry in this situation than I would have liked to be, or oh, I kind of checked out here when I really needed to be on in the situation. And the more times that you apply this process, the easier it'll get to identify what the external and internal stressors are, and the easier it will be to identify what your needs are. And then the sooner you can start to brainstorm about what kind of supports you can start to layer in for yourself. And I'm always going to say this, if something is coming up consistently as being an issue or impacting your life in a negative way, I will always advocate for you to get additional support. We are not meant to be doing this by ourselves. I heard something where it was kind of like there's like a 4-to-1 ratio that we used to have in terms of, you know, 1 baby to 4 adults that can care for the baby at any given time. And so really take the time to layer in that support. So if you found this process helpful in any way, please let me know down in the comments. Please also let me know what is an external or internal struggle that you are still struggling with or were struggling with. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.